now proclaim Kamala Harris of the whorehouse Bannister, first of her skin color, queen of locking up black men, Heel's high protector of the intelligence kingdoms. Long may she reign. Long may she reign.
Welcome back in to David L. Gray Show, Off Code and Unscripted on St. Dominic's Media. Man, Christians are outraged. This is one of the few times in history over the past 500 years where just Christians of all different flavors, from the original Christians, the Catholics, to those who came along 500 years ago, to the Anglicans who came along before that, to the Waldensians before that, everyone is just angry at the opening ceremony of the 2024 Olympics. I've never seen anything like this. I didn't think we can agree on anything, but like everyone's like said, man, the Olympics are just gay and disrespectful. Everyone said, "Oh, that's some real Skittle stuff that happened." Everyone's just taking offense. Bishops from around the world have spoken out. Bishops in Paris, in France, in the United States. Everyone is just complete. It got to the point, hounds of heaven. It got to the point where I saw something I thought I would never see. The organizers of the Olympics said, well, they kind of apologized. They kind of said they're sorry. He's like, oh, they said we didn't mean to offend. They said, here's the exact quote. They said they apologized for any offense caused by their opening ceremony, but they denied any intention of disrespecting, they say, any religious groups, which is a little bit odd because I don't think Muslims aren't saying you disrespected us, right? You didn't hear Muslims. It's not religious groups. Mormons aren't saying anything. Jehovah's Witnesses aren't saying anything. The Jews who take offense at everything, they're not saying anything at all. So it's not religious groups that are offended. That was kind of soft. That was a soft play on them. It wasn't. No, it's Christians of all different flavors. Is it? But they're saying that they denied any intention of disrespect, which is okay. I think we should accept that, right? As Christians, intention does matter. It does. Intention does matter. If someone hits you with their car, that's two different cases in court, right? One, if intention is proven, it could be attempted murder. But if the intention is not proven, well, it could be reduced to manslaughter, right? This intention matters, right? So we should take a look at their intention and find out what was really intended by this train wreck of an opening ceremony. So I did a lot of research here. And so I'm going to walk through the whole opening ceremony, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what happened and why it happened, and whether Christians should actually take offense of the 2024 Paris opening Olympic ceremony. This is the David O. Gray Show, Off Code Unscripted on St. Dominic's Media. Hey, got the merch. You guys, you can get this at our store on St. Dominic's Media. Let me scoot over a little bit. You see, it's What Would Jesus Not Do? Right? You use the WWJD. What would Jesus do? Well, the fact of the matter, friends, there's a lot of things that Jesus would do that you can't do. Like, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus would die for your sins. You can't do that. Right? So what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus would ascend to heaven. You can't do that. So we got the new merch. It's What Would Jesus Not Do? What would Jesus not do? So get the merch. It's in the store. You can put on anything. I got my daughter. She has a little stuffed animal. I put the shirt on the stuffed animal. We got the shorts. We got the hoodies. It's all at St. Dominic's Media Store. Stop by, visit us, stdominicsmedia.com. While you're there, become a hound of heaven or become a monthly member. We definitely appreciate your support. We need it. But let's get into the show. I got a lot I want to tell you. This is David O'Gray, Off Code Unscripted, on Saint Dominic's Media. All right, so here we go. I want to talk about the good first. All right. Because I think there's some good things to say about this opening ceremony, right? So the hooded figure here, if you follow him throughout the opening ceremony, he'll really take you through, I think, really some important cultural aspects of things that have went on throughout the history of France and in particular in Paris. So to follow him is to follow the whole story of what the creator of this drama, Thomas Jolly, intended to do. Okay, and we'll talk about Thomas Jolly here shortly. So stay tuned because we're going to get into some real nefarious things. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. But first, let's stick with the good. So you follow the this Assassin Creed looking character here throughout the drama. Um, he points out, I think, again, a lot of good things about French culture. I'm excited to go to the Paris Olympics next week. I'm going to be there from pretty much all next week. I'll be there. We're going to see about 3 different events. We're going to go see track and field twice. I'm going to go see some, I think, some water polo, some basketball, some stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it. Now, but the hooded figure, if you follow him, there's the scene of hooded figure. He's running across the Paris rooftops, which if you watch Lupin on Netflix or wherever you get your stuff, you know, I know some of you people, you know, you have the streaming things you can get on Amazon Fire Stick, you know, you get your stuff for free. But however you watch, I think Lupin is a wonderful show. It stars the French actor Omar Sy and is based upon a literary figure, Lupin. He's a moral thief, right? So maybe that's Lupin, or maybe it's the Phantom of the Opera, right? So this masked figure, again, he's a prominent person. You want to follow him throughout the whole opening. The opening ceremony also includes like 500 dancers dancing on rooftops at the Pont Notre Dame and other places. And they're all supposed to represent these 500 dancers. They're supposed to represent just the energy, the drama, and how Paris is just a fun city, right? Open all night. And there's a figure at one point in time, he climbs the spire of Notre Dame, and that's supposed to be like a nod to Quasimodo. Fine. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Fine. And then the Liberty leg of the parade. There's another nod to the French writer Victor Hugo. The torchbearer, if you follow him, he takes us through the musical of Les Miserables. And you know, Victor Hugo's novel, which is one of the favorite plays of mine. I want to go to England and see it. Hopefully I get there maybe this year or next year. I want to see it in person, but I always liked it. It's various depictions on TV and movies, but it's a defining icon, a symbol of France, Les Miserables. And so afterwards, you see the French, you see the torchbearer, the masked man. He reappears again and leads viewers through the halls of the Louvre. In this image down below, he's actually looking down. He sees, I think that's when he sees the Mona Lisa picture is missing. He's traveling on a boat. He's carrying a torch. He's a torchbearer. At one point in the Louvre, he's going down the halls, and all the paintings start to come to life. There's the Wrath of Medusa, the coronation of Napoleon. So far, so good. It's if Thomas Jolly had just stuck with that, Christians, we wouldn't have been completely upset. We would have been like, man, there's a lot of aspects of the Catholic French culture that's missing. Yes, the bells of Notre Dame rang for the first time since the fire. All right. But Paris is like the city of saints. There's so many saints just in that one city. He could have given more nods to just the holy history of that city. So if he stuck there, things would have been fine. But he didn't. He moved beyond this masked figure here and to get into some other things, but that's the good. So I just want to leave that there. That when we're looking at the Olympics opening ceremony, I think there's a lot of things that Christians may be offended about. But also at the same time, we can say, okay, there are some things in there that, yeah, that's pretty interesting. We can go with that. But let's get into the hot mess. All right, so I think one of the things that Christians are offended about, right, we can start with the whole metal horse thing, which I thought was interesting. You saw this metal horse that was moving along the Seine River, right? Um, is the Seine River. He's moving along there, and I didn't pick this up when I was first watching it. I was just, as a person like me that's just fascinated by mechanics and engineering, I was more caught up into, man, how was this thing built? And I went and watched the whole video about how it was built, and they called the horse actually Zeus, which is kind of plays into the other things that are going on here. And I was just kind of, man, how is this thing moving? You know, I was kind of, how's this thing powered? Is it battery? Is it lithium? Um, how is it being maneuvered? Is somebody following and driving? I was into the mechanics of the whole thing. I admit that's just how my mind works. But I noticed that some Christians were offended just by the horse because they were saying that it was a play on Joan of Arc, who was from France, of course, right? And so um and I didn't think about that, but then the people who know about these things, who put this whole thing together, they said no, it was a play on Sequoiana, who is a Celtic pagan goddess who is actually the guardian of that river. Okay, so Christians, maybe we jumped the gun there, right? And we've jumped the gun in the past, right? That's not something that's new to us. Sometimes we're kind of easily offended, right? We think everything's about us because we are the most persecuted people, and particularly in Catholics. We're talking about 2,000 years of persecution. We know where the world is at today. We know we're the most persecuted people. Um, and so yeah, I think sometimes we have a victim mentality. We think it's all about us. Oh, they're coming to get us. All right, but maybe we jumped the gun on the whole Jonah Arc thing. Fine. The idea that it was some sort of pagan goddess, I think that's an issue, and I'll get to that shortly. But okay, maybe we jumped the gun here. Fine. But what about this? What about this? What about the um this this scene from Hunger Games? Or um a lot of Christians said this was a play. They were really offended by this because it seemed like they were making a mockery of what Leonardo da Vinci called in his painting The Last Supper. And even had bishops bringing this up, people like Bishop Barron. I don't know if that was my first go to The Last Supper, because The Last Supper is just like always like kind of like a funny painting to me, because that's not is historically inaccurate. That's not how Jesus and his disciples would have eaten the Jewish Seder meal, the Passover meal. They would have been on the ground. They would have been in a circle. I never really liked the painting, first of all. So that's not what immediately came to mind for me. Da Vinci's the Last Supper is just sort of weird for me historically and theologically, right? But I sort of got it. Leonardo da Vinci, he is from France. That's one of their guys. So maybe it was a play on him, right? But again, the people who were responsible for this thing, no, they came out and said, no, you shouldn't take offense to this. Because the intent here was not to make a play on Da Vinci. It was to make a play on what was called the Bacchanala, which were festivals in ancient Rome. So that's the other image that you see down here on the bottom. And so again, this is a big problem. We could lump it in with the Sequiana pagan goddess thing. It's all part of the same milieu here. That if you never heard of a Bacchanal, okay, these were festivals in ancient Rome. They were dedicated to the pagan god Bacchus. He is supposed to be the god of wine, of freedom, intoxication, of ecstasy. So these festivals, they were based upon the Greek pagan goddess Dionysius, the Dionysian mysteries, and they had been around since maybe 200 BC. So initially, these were also kind of associated with the native cult of Liberi, something like that. So a rich pagan history in this whole bacchanalia type of thing. Okay, and so a lot of depravity went on at these things. That's why I'm more inclined to say that this was not a play on the Last Supper. Again, I think Catholics, Christians jumped the gun here, right? We immediately took offense of something based upon our frameworks, things that we're used to, how we understand how images work. But based upon some of the things I'm going to get into here shortly, I accept again this explanation. Again, that it was not Joan of Arc, it was this pagan goddess. Again, it was not the Last Supper, it was this Bacchanal. And because celebrations, again, a lot of dancing, a lot of song, a lot of revelry, sex, rapes, raping women, raping men were not unknown to these things. Any sort of debauchery that you want to do with your body, any sort of unrestrained behavior, any sort of unchastity, heavy drinking, anything went on at these revelries. Okay. So yes, I'm inclined to accept it. That's what's going on here. In this man in blue, who I thought, my framework, how I think about things. I saw this guy in blue with this crown on my head. You know where I went? I immediately went to mermaids. I thought this was a merman. He's in blue. I thought that, because I believe in mer people. I said, hey, I thought this was a nod to me. Like, hey, David Gray's watching. Let's put some mer people in here. I didn't know who this guy was, but apparently he's, again, it goes back to Dionysius, the Greek Dionysius and Dionysian mysteries, right? Again, he's the god of wine, fertility, pleasure, having a good time, Skittle stuff, right? Now, and again, that's the type of stuff that went on in these bacchanalias, a lot of homosexuality. Okay, so I want to leave that there for now. Um, and now I want to transition into wrapping this thing up in giving you the context and intent of what you saw and the real reason why, as Christians, you should be deeply offended by what went on at this um, so-called opening ceremony. All right, fine. If you want to tell us that, man, you Christians, you shouldn't be offended. The intention was not to offend you. Okay, I'll accept that. I'll openly accept that, because as the more I look at what goes on here, I recognize that it was not about me. It was not about, this was about you in your depravity and how you understand the world and what's important to you. Because this menage a trois, which was the first French word I ever learned like when I was a kid, menage a trois. This threesome you depicted here that had nothing to do with Christianity, but it is part of this whole thing of this paganism, this debauchery, this using your body, this unrestrained use of your body, just everything that's wrong and that's oriented with the world today. All the things that's passing as normal in the world today, that's what you're presenting us. You're offending us not because of our religion, but just because what normal people believe. You're not offending us, you're offending God and how God made us. So I accepted that the intention was not to disrespect our religion per se, but was to disrespect the truth and was to disrespect God, because this is what you gave us. That this is normal behavior. If all things you could have showed us about the history of France. This is what you gave us. I mean, the worst part of the history of France. When all the newspapers, you want to take down a monarchy. And so, when all the newspapers, you lie about Marie Antoinette, say strange things about her. She's having sex with her 8-year-old son, painting her in a sort of way to make people hate her. The same thing you did for 8 years with Donald Trump, to the point where a person pulled out a gun and shot him, is what you did with Marie Antoinette. You know the last words she said before they chopped off her head? She stepped on the toe of her executioner and she said, "Pardon. Pardon." I don't think she was a saint. But also I know that she's not the person France you depicted. And you're showing us this. This is what you want to show us for the Olympics, something that's supposed to be about sports? You're showing us the worst part of your history? I just find that to be completely weird. Okay. So when you're looking at these things, you can't just stop at the level of being offended. You have to go behind the curtain. Because I think a lot of Christians are like, hey, we were offended by this thing. They're making a play on the Last Supper. They're making fun of Joan of Arc. They're making fun of Christian history. But they're saying that's not our intent. Okay, well, let's pull back the veil. Let's look at the intent by looking at the people who designed these things. Now, the first person I want to talk about here was a person who was the director behind this whole thing here. And his name was Thomas Jolly. Who's Thomas Jolly, you may ask? Well, Thomas Jolly is a 42-year-old French actor and director known for his work in theater and opera. Okay. It goes without saying, you probably got this just from looking at him. It goes without saying that he is a skittle. He likes playing and poop. Right? He lives with another skittle, also by the name of Thomas. They call themselves a very cute name. They call themselves Thomas Squared, right? The two Thomases. We're Thomas Squared. That's how they introduce themselves. Thomas Squared. They're skittles. Okay. This is who he is. In true to form, what you get with these skittles, they don't just, they want to say, oh, what we do in our bedrooms, none of your business, because the fact of the matter is with skittles, what goes in their bedroom always comes out and informs their whole life. Whether it's their job, whether it's their relationships, the way they drive, it informs everything they do. True to form with Thomas Jolly, he says his queer identity is not just part of who he is, but it's also a lens through which he views and creates his art. And he says that his aim, his goal in life is to challenge norms. Challenge norms, he says, and to promote a message of acceptance and understanding. This is code. When you hear people talk like that, they're talking on code, not off code. That's coded language to mean we need you to accept our depravity. And we're going to force you to accept our depravity. That's off code. On code is acceptance and understanding. Off code, we're going to force you to accept our gay marriages. We're going to force you to accept our gay adoptions. We're going to force you to accept everything evil that we're doing. We're going to shove it down your throat. Off code. That's Thomas Jolly. For instance, let's take a look at some of his work, Thomas Jolly. Right, this right here that you see on the screen now, this is his reimagining in a way of acceptance and understanding. His adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. Look at it here. It just flatly looks demonic. You see the crucifix there. I mean, what's going on here? Again, this is what happens when you put Skittles in charge of things. And we're going to talk about who hired this guy. Because this whole thing, when they say it's not our intention, to disrespect your religion, what was the intention? Who hired him? Who are they funded by? Who are these people? We're going to get into that. But let's finish some more and talk about Thomas Jolly. Yeah, so this whole Romeo and Juliet thing, this is one example. It played at the Paris Opera. There was some street dancing. The setting was like the Los Angeles gay clubs. That's where this whole Romeo and Juliet, his reimagining of it, takes place. LA gay clubs in the 1970s. Right? So Jolly, he says that his approach to art often, again, my approach to art, it involves themes of representation and inclusivity. He says he aims to create spaces that where everyone feels represented. Again, that's on code. Do you want to hear off code? Here's off code. What it aims to do, his art aims to do, is to represent um, depravity in a way that's normal. He wants to include abnormal behavior, depraved behavior, into the sphere of um, what we once thought was just a sickness, a brain disease, a psychological disorder. He wants to create a new order where that is no longer the case. What was once sick, he wants us to now think is well. And so that's the space that he's trying to create. So he says, I aim to create spaces where everyone feels represented. No, he wants to create spaces where abnormal behavior is represented. Um, and again, shove it down our throat. That's off code. Now, how did this guy? So this is who he is. This is his life. This is what he's about. He's been about this since the 80s. He's been doing this type of work. It's been everyone in France knows this guy. He's one of them. Everyone knows what he's about. So this is no secret. He didn't just get this job to create the opening and closing ceremonies. Can't wait to see the closing ceremonies. If this is the opening, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with the closing? All right. But so he didn't just get this. Listen, this isn't just me showing up to the Olympus committee. I have no background. Listen, I did the only play I was ever in. I think I was in fifth grade. I think again, I played the role of a merman, right? My mer history goes way back, people. All right. So if I showed up to Olympus committee and said, "Hey, I want to put an opening and closing," they won't give me the job, right? No. So the job will go to someone who they know, someone in their network, and also someone who has experience, obviously. An experience that he has is turning straight things gay. That's what he does. He turns straight things gay. Whatever is normal, whatever is, Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare, all the stuff he's done, he's made it all gay. He's made it all skittle. This is who he is. So the question to ask now, let's keep pulling back these layers. Let's pull some more layers of this onion. Who hired this guy? I mean, it's one thing for you to be offended, but you should be offended about the right thing. It's one thing to be offended about art, the depictions, but who did that? Who hired him? Let's get into that. So Thomas Jolly was hired by a person by the name of Thomas. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I want to say Estongu. Estongu. And if you ask me who he is, well, I would tell you before I get into this thing here, which I think is the most important part of this whole thing. It's called the Altair Circle. And let me see if I could pull up this organization for you so you could see who these people are. All right, so let me pull this up. Let me show you who this guy is, because I think this is a very important piece to the puzzle. An extremely important piece. Let me show you who hired Thomas Jolly, and then we'll get into the Altair Circle. All right, here we go. All right, so this is the group. This is the Tony Estongu person I told you about. So notice the headline here. The story says he signs LGBT plus charter as part of the wider engagement with the all tier circle. And like I said, I'm going to get into them because that's the important piece. We're pulling back layers of an onion here, right? So we talked about the images, who created those images, who hired that person to make the images, who is backing this whole thing. So now we're on our third layer. This is the Tony, right? So he says he signs a charter as part of a wider engagement with the all tier circle rights group. We'll get into them. So Tony Estangu is the president of Paris 2024. And the engagement charter, it was established in 2012 by this all-tier circle. And there's the company president up there as well. So I think this is Tony. I think that's the company president, and and I'm going to read some quotes from them. Right. The charter commits Paris 2024 to adopting the best practice. Again, this is all coded language. I think you're smart enough to read through this and read off code what's going on here. So the charter commits Paris 2024 to adopting best practices code to fight against discrimination linked to persons' gender orientations code, and to create an inclusive working environment code for LGBT people within its workforce, expected to grow to 4,000 employees and 7,000 games volunteers by 2024. So their goal here is to make Paris really gay and make the Olympics really gay. That's their goal. So everyone, a lot of things what you're seeing going on there from the opening ceremonies down all the way to the volunteers, the reason why it's so skittle was by design. By design. The signing of the charter was timed to mark a 1-week countdown to Paris 2018 and the 10th edition of the Gay Games. Let me read that again. The signing of the charter was timed to mark the 1-week countdown to Paris 2018 and the 10th edition of the Gay Games. Which is scheduled to take place in the city between August 4th and 12th in Paris, which will be represented through participation in its educational ambassador, Emile Nadingu. So while the Olympics are going on, while the Paralympics are going on, there's also something that All-Tier Circle have created called the Gay Games. This is by design. Let's read some quotes here from Tony, president of Paris 2024. He said, "We are very happy to support." This is all on code, okay? Everything he's saying here is code. Read in between the lines. "We are very happy to support and engage with All Tier Circle by signing this LGBT charter. The fight against discrimination touches every sector. With Paris 2024, our aim is to cultivate sports core values of respect and solidarity to drive real change in attitudes and combat stereotypes. This charter will commit all of us, leaders, team members, and volunteers, to creating an exemplary work environment for people who identify as Skittle." Next quote from Christopher, president of All Tier Circle. This is what he said when he signed the gay charter. "At a time when, rather than coming together to imagine our collective future, people are preferring to focus on their individual roots. When differences of skin color, religion, and sexual orientation code are being placed in the spotlight, institutional political leaders must redouble their vigilance and emphasize cooperation and the fight against all forms of discrimination. Code. Here's what Catherine has to say. She's the Altier Circle spokesperson. The signing of this LGBT charter has both symbolic and operational scope. High level code, right? That is some of the most high level code I've ever read. Has symbolic and operational scope. Wow. Which confirms to Altier Circle the strong values of solidarity on which the Olympic and Paralympic movements have been founded. I understand why this lady's a spokesperson. All she knows how to do is write lies in code. This is amazing. It is also highly relevant to employees and team members to respect and combating prejudice, stereotyping, and discriminatory acts. This is a unique opportunity to act together to drive forward inclusion and respect for LGBT people, society as a whole. Let's just be anti-Catholic. Whatever the Catholic Church teaches about sexual disorder, whatever Christians of normal thinking who don't read scriptures to justify their own depravity know to be whatever they want to, however they want to interpret scriptures to reject the truth. We reject all that. That's what they're saying. This is a new world order that they're creating to make sexual depravity normal behavior. Which you saw going on in that the depiction, which was not a Last Supper, but was a depiction of the Bacchanala. That's what they want the world to be. That's exactly what they want the world to be. They want the world to be what you saw going on that stage. Let me bring it back up just to remind you. This is what they want the world to be. They want it to be a bacchanal. This is what the charter was about. The charter was about this image. This is what they want you to accept as normal. This was not the Last Supper. This was sexual depravity. This is what the gay charter, what the Altier charter, what the Charter 24 was all about. That's what they're pushing. Now let's get into the Altier Circle. Let's pull back the fourth layer of this onion. Okay. Let me blow this up here so you can see just some of their vision and some of the things that they're about, because this is very essential. It says our vision, this is all in code, by the way. Our vision for everyone to be able to flourish in their professional lives, public and private, organizations and companies must offer an inclusive work environment in a climate of respecting and listening. People must be considered and welcoming in a diversity code, whether it is related to their sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, or disability. And they really only include those, they only include those other things just, again, to make it seem like it's normal. We're just like these other things. Even though we have a brain disease, even though we're living in a state of psychosis, we're actually normal. It's just like your race, right? You're Indian, your social construct, whatever, your culture, Indian. I'm transgender. We're the same. That's what they mean by diversity. The Altier Circle has been working for 25 years in favor of LGBT people within organizations. The well-being of LGBT people at the work is everyone's business. Leaders, managers, and teams of human resource departments must invest themselves on a daily basis to promote the inclusion of LGBT people in its workplace. LGBT plus allies, collaborators within the professional structure also have a major role in building a fulfilling environment. Then they break down lexicon. Right? What is this? The other circle includes in the LGBT acronym plus lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, queer, non-binary people, and all the diversity of sexual orientations and gender identities. Aldephity and inclusion in neutral term that includes fraternity and sisterhood. Aldephity refers to the solidarity between one's fellow human beings, whether they are men, women, or non-binary. This term was introduced in 2001 by the feminist writer Florence Montenod. So this is what we're dealing with. These are the layers of this onion. You saw the images that made you mad at the Olympics that you thought was about you. You thought it was about Christianity. They weren't. That was not the Last Supper. That was not Joan of Arc. All right. This was something else that was going on. And it's more disturbing. It'd be one thing for them to mock Christianity. No, they're mocking humanity. They're mocking God's design. This is much deeper than what you thought it was. This is sick. This is demonic. And this is organized. Didn't just happen a couple years ago when Thomas was hired. Thomas was planted. And this altar circle has been working for 25 years. They were parts of, with Tony, they were part of bringing the Olympics to France for this very reason. This is an agenda to push sexual depravity. You thought the French Revolution, you thought that the sexual revolution was established a new world order? It did. By a new world order, I just means throughout history, there's always people who come along to establish new moral orders. Christ Jesus himself established a new world order, a new moral order. And there's always these movements, whether it's Protestantism back in the 1500s, whether it's Freemasonry back in the 1717, 1716, whether it's the communists in 1917, whether it's the big tech giants now, whether it's the sexual revolution in the 1960s, whether it's the big tech, what's going on. All these are competing ideologies to establish different moral orders. And this one that you see going on here now, the altar circle, they're also part of establishing, again, this new moral order, this new world order where psychosis, where you a psychosis, but I mean by psychosis is you living in something that's not real, where you accepted a lie as truth. And okay, it's one thing for you to live in a state of psychosis, but people who live in a state of psychosis of thinking their sexual depravity is normal behavior and want to put that on other people, that's this projection of psychosis onto society. That's what altar circle is wanting to do. That's the new world order for them, to project psychosis onto into the various different cultures throughout the world. Okay. And so again, this is organized, this is planned, this has been going on for decades. France has been known for what, almost over a decade, that they were going to have the Olympics. So this whole thing, this not just happened overnight, my friends. This was an attack against God. This is spitting in God's face. This is acting as if God is dead. If he's not dead, let's kill him again. That's what this is about. Let's talk a little bit about altar circle, a little bit more. I just want to show you how normal this whole thing is. Okay. Who are some of the people who back them? Because you got to go to the money. Where's the money? Show me the money. I just want to demonstrate to you how normal altar circle, Tony and Thomas, this whole thing is. Even the French culture itself, back in 2022, do you know that 66% of French people who they polled, they say that a company must do everything possible to promote Skittle inclusion. I say that to say in 2022, 60% of people who said companies have to make everything LGBT. They have to make that one of their priorities. That was 2022. Altar Circle has been doing this work since over 25 years. So they've been really very deeply, heavily successful in transforming the French culture into reflect their goals and their agenda. How did they do this? How did they do this? How did they make French culture this morally depraved? How did they make French culture this atheistic? Some of you would say, well, the French never really recovered from the French Revolution and its persecution against the Catholic Church. killing priests, persecuting priests, burning down churches, taking churches' property, and all that stuff. Oh, they never recover from that. I don't know about that. I think there's a moment there when they started to recover after World War II, perhaps. Never fully recover, and I guess that's part of the problem. But how? So to get to this point so fast, it takes money. It takes influence. It takes the right partnerships, and it takes a plan that it takes a plan and buy-in to that plan by some very important people in government and people who own the banks. Let me tell you about some of the people that publicly support Altier Circle. One of them, some of these names you may not be familiar with if you don't live in Europe, if you don't travel, whatever. But if you do, you probably ran across some of these names, whether you're in France or traveling around. One of them is a company named Orange. Orange is a very powerful, wealthy, influential, well-connected telecommunications company in France. So communication backs them. LVMH, which is a multinational corporation that specializes in luxury goods. Renault Group, an automobile manufacturer. Quadient, a company that specializes in mailing equipment, business processing automation, customer experience management, parcel locker solutions. So again, we have media, we have luxury, we have automobile, we have people who control where information goes. This one will come as no surprise to you. Pfizer. Pfizer, best known for a vax that kills people. One of the world's largest pharmaceuticals is bankrolling Altier Circle. Legrand, a specialist in electrical and digital infrastructure. I mean, if you have money, you want to build a company, your corporation wants to, build a lot of smart technology into your building, whatever. This is who you talk to, Legrand. All right, they're into all that stuff: AI, electronics, digital infrastructure solutions, all that stuff. Altier Circle is backed by the most powerful and wealthy groups in Europe, which makes them very powerful, very wealthy. So, my friends, that's what this whole thing is about. That was the real intention of the 2024 Paris Olympics opening ceremony. This was just a new world order to make the bacchanalists, sexual depravity, raping women, raping children, drunken revelry, just unrestrained behavior, to make unrestrained behavior normal. Can't wait to see the closing ceremony. Let me get to some of your comments. See what you guys thought about my take on this. And as you see, I try to bring the receipts. This wasn't just me getting on camera, just be mad, saying all the cliche things about the images. Oh, they're attacking Christianity. They're attacking the Lord's Supper. They're attacking the Holy Eucharist. They're attacking our saints and our no. They went much deeper than that. You got to go deeper with these things. These people are not shallow at all. Satan has machinations that work at levels. Right? Satan doesn't even play chess. Right? It's not even 3D chess that he's playing. Like, this is a long game, people. And so you just can't just jump in here with just a quick emotional reaction without pulling back the layers of this onion. It's much deeper than that. So let me get into your comments, see what you thought about the David L. Gray show on this topic. This is the David L. Gray show, Off Code Unscripted on St. Dominic's Media. Man, we got a lot of comments here. A lot of comments. Connie Cunningham says this. I'm not angry. I'm just sad. Yeah, I think that's a good reaction. Laura says boycott, which I've been hearing some of that from people like let's boycott the Olympics. I don't know about. I've never really been a big fan of boycott. If we're talking about financial boycott or something like that, because these people do not need our money. They have the money. You saw all the backlash that came out, and they issued apologies saying it wasn't our intention, which is not a real apology. So I don't know about boycott, but I know that's a perspective. I see people saying that. Tesla calls it gaslighting. Again, I don't. Again, that's not my perspective. I don't. I think it's an agenda to normalize. It's just one of many other things that they do to normalize depraved, unrestrained, demonic, sinful behavior. Eternal life plan. My friend, she says, why do these opening ceremonies need to always have, you know, these all this drama in pageantry? I think that's a fair critique. Why not just um why not just why not just play sports? What happened? Why happened to just play sports? I like that. I like the perspective from Christine over at Eternal Life Plan. I like that. But I tell you what, if you remember a few years ago, it was a few years ago. It had to be what 2008 or something like that. China. Remember their opening Olympic? Remember their opening ceremonies? I thought that was amazing. And I think it showcased, I think what the Olympics are supposed to showcase. It's supposed to showcase athleticism and showcase the culture. I thought that was amazing. And so what Thomas and Tony and all these guys here from Olympus Committee, what they wanted to showcase us about France was sexual debauchery. They want us to know that the French people are just unchaste and sexually depraved. All right. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, why not just play sports? That's pretty good. Naja makes a comment here about just what women are wearing. A lot of unchastity in some of the way that women dress. Yeah. Birdie coming in from the UK. What is up? Hummingbird said, I've been changing channels during the blasphemous parts. I could not believe my eyes. Yeah. I think live, again, when I was watching it, I was just so fascinated by that mechanical horse going down the river. I kept getting mad every time they cut away from it. So I really didn't notice much else besides the mechanical horse. I was that fascinated and that intrigued by what mechanics went into there. So I admit I missed it. I missed everything on the first go around. Hey Dan. Diane also says her pastor mentioned though. Yeah, we posted a homily today over St. Dominic's Media from Deacon Christopher Major. Sometimes he posts his homilies over at our site. And so yeah, so I noticed that in his homily he had mentioned it. So yeah, I think the reaction was just immediately visceral, just a very surface reaction to immediately being offended. And I definitely get it. And I think if one person, if that was their immediate take, hey, that looks like the Lord's Supper, all other Christians like, yeah, that's the Lord's Supper. And I see how that domino just like kind of triggered everyone, right? Um, so yeah, I get it. Fernando checking in from Brazil. Thomas earlier in the show said Thomas is Jewish. Interesting. A gay Jew. Uh, Imagine that. He must be a reformed Jew. Um, Clue just flatly disagrees. He said, no, it was a marker of the Last Supper, even though scripture does not call it the Last Supper. A very recognizable artistic icon. It represents the passion, life of Christ. That's why. Actually, that's not true. Actually, not true. They try to play smart with foolishness. Yeah. Dominic says the philosophy of the Olympics has always been Gnostic paganism from the get go. Paris added philosophical and theological droids to it. Yeah. I mean, the Olympics, yeah, I would say Olympics have always been problematic in a sense. Because it's never been, it's always been an element of vanity in it, some self indulgence, some, it's never really been about Christ. It's never been a celebration of Christ in his church. It's always been a celebration of the individual and their accomplishments. So on just what we would call it, we would call it just a anthropological level of just what the Olympics are all about. This is about a celebration of personal human achievement, right? So it's always been problematic. And the Skittle crowd is doubling down. They're hardening their hearts. Yeah, they have to. And they're going hard. And, they're winning a lot of battles. They are. The designer, Clue JFF says, the designer uses the cross in his demonic artistic displays. So, no, I don't believe they didn't know what they were doing. Yeah. Yeah. I would say Thomas, he is very intentional in what he's doing. Right. So we can say, oh, is there a double entendre here? Is it a display to Bacchus, but also a display of a play on the Last Supper? Perhaps. We can say that. We can say, oh, it's a double entendre, a double meaning there. I'm using a lot of French words in the show today. I already said menage a trois. Now I'm saying double entendre. I'm really getting ready for France next week. I'm doing really good. Um, yeah, but I was saying that in context of the whole thing. So let's take a holistic view. Let's say there's two times when it seemed to be offensive to Christians. Let's say the Last Supper, let's say Joan of Arc. Okay. But if we look at everything, it was all paganism. It was all a celebration of paganism. So Robert says a Wiccan acquaintance rightly saw this as a deliberate blasphemy but my in-law congregational pastor thought no big deal. Yeah, I get that. Robert says Bacchanal, yes, but they even admit they used Da Vinci's Last Supper as a deliberate pattern. Yeah, I didn't actually see that. Everything I read from them said this was the um, Bacchanal. But that's interesting if they would admit that. So that would be a double entendre. Dominic says, how much CO2 is at the Olympic flame producing? How many homes? Good stuff. Oh, Christine here from Eternal Lifeline. Christine Harrington. She says, I'm so glad I'm no longer working in corporate environment. I'd be so fired over all this inclusion and diversity. Yeah, me too. He said, I would have said something by now, right? You can only submarine for so long until you gotta come up. And when you come up, you're gonna get fired. Yeah, Deacon Toby agrees with what I said. That apology was insanely weak. All right. It should draw massive condemnation. Yeah, because it wasn't an apology. They're saying, sorry, you were offended. We didn't intend that, right? Colin says France was once the mother of the church. They have lost it. So many great saints come from France. The devil chose his moment. Yeah. I think France was once called the um what's it called, the second Rome or something like that. Was that the nickname? Or the little sister or something like that. So had to do with the Avion papacy there. So a lot of rich history there. And it was really disappointing that more of that wasn't shown. Yeah, like I said, the bells in Notre Dame rang. There's a nod to the Hunchback of Notre Dame. But everything else from the river ride, the pagan goddesses, the pagan gods, just throughout the whole thing, we're just really celebrating just the worst part, the menage a trois scene. Uh, Marie Antoinette head being on display, cut off. They just why do you want to show us your worst instead of your best? It's like people who still come to us today saying, "Oh yeah, you Catholics, you and your pedophile priest." And I always like to tell these people, "Oh, thanks for recognizing our sinners. How about next time recognize our saints?" Why are Catholics we're the only people that seems people always want to recognize our worst instead of our best? Any other organization, people always want to say, "Oh man, this person is from that organization and that's their founders and stuff like this." But when it comes to Catholicism, when it comes to us, they just want to always point out our sinners. But that's kind of what France did. They kind of want to show us their worst. And ironically, people like Thomas thinks that's their best. They think that the pagan history, the sexual debauchery, that's the age they want to go back to. He doesn't want to go back to the saints. He doesn't want to go back to the time where Catholicism flourished in Rome. I mean, in France. He wants to go back to the worst parts of their history. We saw it in modern behavior. France had a blackout, our Lord is speaking. Yeah, it was interesting that shortly after the opening ceremonies, there was a huge power outage in France. The only church, it looked like from some of the images, one of the few buildings that lights were on, at least in one part of the city, was a church where there's been Eucharistic adoration for over 100 years continually. So I thought that was an interesting intersection between um, providence and warning, right? Very interesting. It says Carter got the U.S. out of the Moscow games. Should have made it for all time there. Just get out of the business of the Olympics. Right. Always been impressed by the United States, though. We're one of the few countries there that we don't. We have corporations that tend to sponsor our Olympics. Sometimes the what do you call it, the ICO, the committee or whatever, sponsors some. But we're competing against a lot of countries that the country sponsors their Olympians, and from the time that they're kids. But in our countries, the parents who foot the bill, and maybe they'll get a scholarship to college. Maybe they'll get an endorsement from I don't know, Wheaties or something like that. But I always thought it was kind of cool that America, we come there and we're not communists, and we don't invest in our children. The government doesn't invest in our children in athletics in that way. Oftentimes, your kid go to sports in some cities and some elementary schools and college, high schools. You gotta. That's not even free. You got to pay for a uniform. You got to pay for travel. You got to sell some cookies or wash some cars or something like that. So I always thought it was cool to see Americans at the Olympics, because I know how much effort and sacrifice they put into being great and to being excellent. And when they win against countries like China or Russia, where the state is funding the coaches and all that stuff, I always thought it was kind of cool. One of my goals when I went to college, I want to compete and I was trying to get to the Olympic trials for the Atlanta Olympics, running 800. Didn't make it. Got distracted with girls. Even if I didn't get distracted, I don't know if I would have been in the Olympics because I was good, right? But I always recognized that I had to be at least 3 times as better of a lot of people I was competing against, just because I'm 5'8" and a half. Typically, your 800 runners are on average, or usually 5'11" and above. So I always recognized I was taking a lot more strides than the people I was competing against. So I had to be excellent, right? And I don't know if I would ever really have gotten there, but I was good. My best time, I think, was like a 152. So it would have got me in the ballpark of getting there, but we'll never know. D. Eubank says, we saw the Grammys outright performance of Unholy. This shouldn't be a surprise to any of us. It's all down here from here. Yeah, we've seen this. Heck, we've seen this back in the 80s. Remember MTV? Remember some of those videos? I mean, this has been going on. This trajectory has been going on for a long time. I mean, people used to get mad with Elvis doing the pelvic thing, right? So using media and television as a form to transform young minds into accepting things that are abnormal as normal has been going on for a long time. So don't boycott the Olympics. Boycott, I don't know, TV, media, electricity. But even before you boycott that, you can go back and you can look at silent film. Uh, you can go back and look at plays and stage plays and things like that. I mean, Venice just has a rich history of the mask that they use and some of the weird things they would do in those plays. Let's boycott art. Let's just boycott art altogether. I don't know. Humans will do human. Depraved humans will do depraved human things. People who reject Christ will engage in behaviors that depict their rejection of Christ. Right. So let's just boycott humans outside of Christ. Now we have to pray for people. We have to do more, obviously, as Christians to figure out a way to get in some of these rooms where these decisions are made. You can't tell me in this room where Thomas was hired, where Altier Circle was. You can't tell me that if there were some good, strong Catholics in that room, that this whole thing would have flew. So we have to do a lot more to engage the culture and to be in a room where these decisions happen, where these decisions are made, right? So because you have to be in those rooms. Like, who was in a room when it was decided that Washington, D.C., that the South would have the nation's capital? Why didn't it happen? Why did New York City have the nation's capital? Like, who was in that room where that decision happened? You got to be in these rooms because strange things happen. And then you're like, okay, how did Thomas get hired? Because we weren't in that room. So let's boycott rooms. No, we just have to do better praying and be witnesses and being in the rooms where these decisions happen. So Colin says Sodom and Gomorrah. Oh, there we go. D. Eubank says, yeah, the eldest daughter of the church. Yeah. Yeah, that's the name that France is given. Eldest daughter is a whore now. How is she doing? She's a whore lesbian. Man, what happened to her? She let the wrong people in. She let the wrong people influence her. She's a black sheep now. He's a whore lesbian. Amazing. Diane says, this is your calling. God wanted you to testify for him. Yeah, I think, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Diane. I really appreciate that. Always wondering about my calling. I have a sense to know what I was called to do, but I struggle with that because I know that God has given me enough time to do it like I want to do it. So that's a little argument that I have with him. Like, okay, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, how come I don't have time to do it? Right. And my solution, of course, is just to have me win the lottery so I don't have to have a job and work. And I can just do what I know my calling is. But you got to do what you can do when you can do it. So humility is built into that, I guess. He's making me humble. The most common name in France is Mohammed. Ooh. Need I say more? No, you don't. Say less. That's a great point. And yeah, we are still suspicious about how the Notre Dame burned down. I think Joe has a answer. Muhammad, atheist, right? Yes. France is a dead society. Same goes with Sweden, Germany, UK. Man, after this whole Olympics thing, after reading some more information about France, about 60% of the people there just want everything gay. And I always said this with people, when I moved here to Germany and people, and I would hear these critiques about Germany, how bad Germany is. And then I would look, I'm like 20 minutes from the French border. And, we go there quite often. Not all the time to Paris, but, sometimes we'll go there because it's close. And I came to understanding, man, the Germans, yeah, I think they get a bad reputation because they don't do the code game. They don't really hide. German people are really just open and honest. They'll do things in your face, like you're walking down the street and people just stare at you and not turn away when you stare. They're just a different type of people. In their synod here that they have, they're just open. They tell you, hey, we want women priests. They're open. And I think because they're so transparent, people look at them, wag the finger at them. But the thing that people don't know about France is worse than Germany. It is. It, as far as gay blessings and all, they were doing them long before anyone else was. A lot of weird things goes on in France, but they hide it. They play code. People don't know, right? I think they know now. I think it's kind of out now who the French are. They show the whole world this is who we are. We're pagans, and we celebrate paganism. So So we'll see. Diane says, David, you dug deep into this limp debacle. It gave me some critical thinking points. Thank you. That was a goal. Appreciate it. God bless y'all. Hope you have a great week. I'll maybe hop on this week again. It's gonna be a busy week. Like I said, getting ready to leave for the Olympics. I'll be gone like 10 days, so probably nothing next week. And I got to write my reflections, my commentaries, my liturgical sense of the readings of Mass for this Sunday coming up, the 18th, Sunday Ordinary Time, and the 19th. I'll be gone 2 Sundays. So I'm going to be busy this week. So I don't know if I get to you again, but if I don't, I'll be keeping you in my prayers, keeping yours. Pray for my family's safety while we're there in Paris. It's crazy. Some weird things are happening. So we're driving. So yeah, keep us in your prayers. I appreciate it. But until then, until next time, blessings and shalom to you and to yours. And I will catch you in the next one. God bless.